Theodore Roosevelt. He was a man, a smart man, a strong man, a bold man, a man's man. In his presidency, he was known for two large subjects, his foreign policy and his domestic program. His domestic program was titled the Square Deal, also known as the 3 C's. The Square Deal mainly focused on three major points: the conservation of natural resources, corporate law, and consumer protection. In this video, we're going to go over issues that caused the goals of the Square Deal, notable events, acts, and people of the time, and effects and changes because of the 3 C's. By the late 1890s, land was exploited for its natural resources and saw many forests and grazing land occupied by land speculators and developers. This would soon lead to a tradition of waste in America. However, Roosevelt cared for nature and also saw it as a benefit to mankind, as in a conserved wilderness, timber could be harvested, sport could be had, water could be taken to irrigate farmland, and all these benefits would be lost if the wilderness was destroyed by this lack of conservation. So of course, Roosevelt knew that he had to conserve these resources and planned to do so in the Square Deal. In fact, by the end of his presidency, he had established 230 million acres of public land, 150 national forests, the first 55 federal bird reservations, 5 national parks, and the first 18 national monuments. In 1902, he established the Federal Reclamation Service. This service used dams and irrigation to make arable land for farmers. This provided land for farmers instead of them going into wild land and killing valuable species. Also in 1902, Roosevelt established the Newlands Act, which funded irrigation projects in the West. In 1905, Roosevelt also created the Bureau of Forestry. The Bureau only made sure a select few trees had the right to be chopped, and also made sure rain wouldn't cause soil erosion, runoff, or pollution. However, because of the Bureau's establishment of rules, timbermen protested against being limited to what trees to cut down. Because of this, Congress passed a bill that saw a limit to the president's power of preserving western forests. However, Theodore Roosevelt, before signing the bill into action, signed 16 million more acres of forest under protection of the federal government. What a legend. Roosevelt also established the Inland Waterway Commission in 1907 to study water power development, rivers, soil, and transportation. He also established the Tongass and Chugach Forest Reserves in Alaska, as well as setting Hawaiian Islands aside for bird reservations and creating the Grand Canyon National Monument in Arizona under federal preservation in 1908. Finally, he made the National Conservation Commission, which drawed long-term plans to preserve natural resources. Some important people who helped conserve these natural resources was John Muir, a friend of Roosevelt who is also an American naturalist and influenced his policies. We also cannot forget about Gifford Pinchot, who was the chief of the Forestry Service and a political Roosevelt advocate. The effects of Roosevelt's conservation policies brought the topic of environmentalism and conservation to the national government, as well as seeing America becoming the first major country to conserve land for nature. Some key issues concerning corporations at this time included unrestricted trust, a laissez-faire style government, and a lack of competition between companies. Roosevelt decided to fight this issue due to a fear of it harming consumers and to bring a level playing field for small businesses. Some key events at this time include the anthracite coal strike of 1902, which saw a 9-hour workday for workers, a 10% wage increase, and was the first example of federal arbitration and strikes. There was also the case of the Northern Securities Company being dissolved using the Sherman Antitrust Act in 1902 to serve railroads independently, as well as the Expediting Act of 1903, which was made to break up steel, meatpacking, oil, and railroad trusts by moving their court cases to the top of their list to solve issues faster, as well as the Elkins Act of 1903, which amended the Interstate Commerce Act by allowing the ICC to put heavy fines on railroads and refuse railroad companies to hold rebates, as well as making railroad corporations liable for discriminatory practices. The government also set up the Department of Commerce and Labor in 1903 to regulate businesses and regulations, as well as the Hepburn Act of 1906, which expanded the ICC jurisdiction and allowed it to set up maximum railroad rates, as well as seeing railroads corporations' financial records. We also cannot forget about the Immunity of Witnesses Act of 1906, which did not allow corporate officials to plead immune to activities of their corporations. And finally, there was the Aldrich-Vreeland Act of 1908, which brought government regulation of any emergency currency by making a national monetary commission. The results of Roosevelt's policies and all of these events soon saw the effect of the rise of trust busting, labor unions moving to the side of Republicans, and the beginning of progressive policies in the workplace. It also saw the end of a laissez-faire style of rule in the executive branch, and also protected companies from extreme demands of labor unions by compromising. Some key issues concerning consumer protection include the unfair practices of drugs, poor quality and sanitation of food, the lack of true labels, no inspection of factories, and the unregulated drugs and ingredients in products. However, Roosevelt believed that the government should regulate corporations in order to protect society, and especially with this protection of goods. This would see Congress in 1902 strengthening the power of the Public Health Service, as well as establishing the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 and the Meat Inspection Act of the same year. This saw the establishment of the FDA and to ban foreign and internal goods that were mislabeled or adulterated. And finally, in 1907, the first color regulation in foods was established, allowing 7 colors suitable for food. A key person in this consumer protection was Upton Sinclair, who informed Roosevelt about the meatpacking industry by writing the book The Jungle. The effects of these consumer protection laws saw the establishment of agencies to regulate industries, inform consumers on what they were buying with labels, and allowed infected products to be kept out of markets. One key theme is geography and environment, because due to the establishment of 230 million acres of protected natural areas and the establishment of federal services to protect those lands, conservationist and preservationist policies would begin to close off land for farmers and corporations, assuring the safety of wildlife on biomes for the first major time in American history. Another theme is politics and power, because due to Roosevelt's policies of eliminating trusts and intervening in events such as the coal strike of 1902, the laissez-faire style of government and influence of monopolies in the national government diminished and was temporarily abandoned. And that is all. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've been informed about the square deal.